My slow clap processor made it into this thing, so we have that. Since it doesn't look like we're going anywhere.
The Orange Box is a much-loved video game compilation released by Valve Corporation in 2007, including the iconic Half-Life 2 bundled in with its Episode 1 and Episode 2 expansions, together with the multiplayer sequel to Team Fortress Classic, and a peculiar first-person puzzle platformer called Portal. Now, as someone who writes about video games, I have a hard time objectifying any video game experience as totally perfect. Of Portal, though, I will say this. It's as close to a perfect game as a perfect game can get. The premise, the gameplay mechanics, the light narrative, for me, it's all extremely well designed and implemented. The game's gravity-bending teleportation portals created via the Aperture Science handheld portal device, which I'll just call the portal gun from now on. This portal gun fried my mind the first time I played. Creating inner space doorways within which to traverse was, for me, equal parts perplexing and dumbfounding. The thin line between quirky humor and subtle menace straddled by sentient AI antagonist GLaDOS was a compelling motivator too, adding much-needed context to the cold, sterile environment inside Aperture Science Laboratory's Enrichment Centre. Producing a follow-up to Portal would take a Herculean effort by Valve's development team. I mean, how do you improve on near perfection? Speaking in 2010, Valve project manager Eric Johnson said the aim of the first Portal game was to encourage players to think about games in a different way. The challenge with Portal 2 then, as he puts it, was to re-surprise people.
I'm speaking in an accent that is beyond her range of hearing.
Look, Metal Ball, I can hear you.
Run! I don't need to do the voice. Run!
Well, I'd say it was mission accomplished. As for me, Portal 2 surpasses its predecessor in every conceivable way. The atmosphere and world building within Aperture Science Laboratories transcends the monochrome hard edges of the first game to become something more intoxicating. For the test chambers of Portal 2's distant future have been reclaimed by Wilderness. The melding of music and sound design was especially eye-opening for me at that time too, with smooth synthesized ambient tones invoking a sense of new age mixed with unsettling industrial clangs and texture. The soundtrack's motifs and melody develop as puzzles are solved too. Now, I couldn't say for certain if Portal 2 was the first game to marry such audio cues to gameplay, but it was certainly the first time I picked up on it. It's as if advancing through each test chamber peeled back a little more of the subterranean lab's fractured veneer, revealing more of its captivating world through sound and music. The ingenious mind-bending puzzles return too, but with new tools and mechanics that are steadily introduced in a pleasing learning curve to ensure you've gotten to grips with each new addition before ramping up the difficulty. There are more memorable new characters in hovering AI personality Core Wheatley and former Aperture Science CEO Cave Johnson, both of which are extremely well voice acted by Stephen Merchant and J.K. Simmons respectively.
You're not part of the control group, by the way. You get the gel. Last poor son of a gun got blue paint. All joking aside, that did happen. Broke every bone in his legs. Tragic, but informative. Or so I'm told.
Portal 2 is approximately twice the length of the first Portal game, so those new tools to play with alongside the Portal gun are given space to develop, oftentimes revealing themselves to have dual purpose as you progress. For instance, the Hardlight Bridge immediately serves as means to travel to unreachable places by feeding it through a portal. A few test chambers later, and the same light bridges are used as barriers, protecting you from the musically charming turrets. Together, with aerial faith plates and excursion funnels, Portal 2's test chambers add a sense of verticality that was largely absent from the first game. Thanks to these new additions, the game felt remarkably fresh for returning Portal players. Remarkably, it was simultaneously an engaging introduction for those diving into Aperture Science labyrinthian laboratories for the first time too. Of course, there'd be players who weren't familiar with the techniques taught in the first game, so Portal 2 needed to train new players without boring seasoned players. The subtle ways in which this was achieved are twofold. First, the tutorial section at the game's outset revisits the same testing chamber, albeit dilapidated of course, with only minor amendments to those original puzzles, meaning returning players can just rifle through without any trouble. And secondly, voiceless player character Chell's run speed was increased slightly, with energy light ball puzzles replaced by instantaneous lasers, further streamlining the early portions of the game. These are deliberate design choices, with Valve project manager Eric Johnson confirming as much by stating they wanted to make a sequel that wasn't any more difficult than the first, and that they wanted to harness the skills Portal players have already learned. It's remarkable then that solving Portal 2's puzzles, like all good puzzle games, still makes the player feel pretty smart, whether they're a Portal veteran or a first-timer. See, this is the crutch of great puzzle games for me. If you'll allow me to be overly simplistic for a second, I'll say that successfully completing an objective in almost every video game, no matter the genre, can be whittled down to pressing buttons in the correct order. It's instinct in tandem with muscle memory, a symphonic combination of hands and controller. Puzzles, on the other hand, require mental grift. They prod at the gooey gray matter inside the skull. And when I solve a puzzle, when I engage in lateral thinking, when I apply logic to a seemingly impossible task, it feels like me. It's like I'm the one who solved the puzzle. Me, and me alone. I've been given the ingredients to a complex cake recipe and figured out how to bake it perfectly. No matter how strong Portal 2's puzzles are, though, without the game's underlying narrative focusing on Chell's relationship with GLaDOS, there'd be an absence of emotional heft by the game's end.
I know things look bleak, but that crazy man down there was right. Let's not take these lemons. We are going to march right back upstairs and make him put me back in my body. And he'll probably kill us because he's incredibly powerful and I have no plan.
Superbly voiced by Ellen McLean, GLaDOS is equal parts witty and sinister. Her facetious quips, a masterclass in passive aggressiveness. Her relentless pursuit of science, a borderline farce. As Portal 2 progresses, GLaDOS's chirps do lose their edge and her sarcasm subsides, affording the player opportunity to learn about her computational makeup. Her character development is pretty remarkable, as eventually we learn her personality comes from Aperture CEO Cave Johnson's assistant Carolyn. Essentially, GLaDOS becomes more human as the game progresses, her relatability leading to emotional attachment from the player. It's part Stockholm Syndrome and part something akin to the love you have for an endearingly grumpy relative. The shift in personality is important, of course, as a mellower GLaDOS was essential for this relationship to blossom. Despite all the game's new mechanics, puzzles, and characters, Portal 2's primary draw for me is the relationship between Chell and GLaDOS. It's a kinship laced in nuance, which is astounding when you consider GLaDOS is lifeless artificial intelligence and Chell is a character who doesn't even speak. As an aside, I can't talk about GLaDOS without quoting some of my favorite lines of hers. There's the comically unsupportive, "The next test is impossible," the iconic, "We can put our differences behind us for science, you monster," or my personal favorite, "Here comes the test results, you are a horrible person." That's what it says, a horrible person. We weren't even testing for that. Put simply, the overgrown wilderness in the long uninhabited Enrichment Centre would feel a lot more vacant without GLaDOS. So, masterpiece is a word I see thrown around often, but it's a term I seldom use. For Portal 2 though, for me, no other word suits it. The strength of the game's writing and mind-melting puzzles, its contrast, its narrative, its charm, wit, and ingenuity, they're just simply too strong to call it anything else. What do you think? Did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.